Hello students, welcome again. Students, in today's video lecture, we are going to discuss the history of English literature, and particularly we are focusing the whole discussion on the movement of Reformation found during the 16th and 17th centuries and how this movement of Reformation influenced English literature. Students, remember, literature is always the reflection of the life and society in which it is produced. And English literature is not an exception. If you examine the social and political and religious history of England during the 16th century, we find two important movements, and they are Renaissance and Reformation. In one of my previous videos, I have discussed the influence of Renaissance on English literature, but in today's video lecture, we are focusing mainly on how the movement of Reformation influenced English literature. Remember, this movement of Reformation was a religious movement, which was started to reform the society, to reform the church and Christianity. The movement was actually started by Martin Luther in 1517. Friends, remember this name, Martin Luther and 1517. It is a landmark in the entire political and religious history of England. Martin Luther, he protested, he went against the corruption and evil practices of the Roman Catholic Church, which was existing in his times in the beginning of the 16th century. Martin was not much satisfied with the religious practices adopted by various religious authorities. Why? Because there was much corruption, there were so many evils, found among the authority, among the people who were following this Roman Catholic Christianity. So this movement was actually a religious movement, and they wanted to establish, Martin Luther along with all other his followers in the beginning of the 16th century, he wanted to establish a new religion. He wanted to reform the present religion and establish a new religion which would be based upon the old scriptures. The primary aim of this movement was to eradicate the evils from church and Christianity. Now, what are the steps of this movement that we will discuss, and then later we will discuss how it influenced English literature. There are 4 steps, 4 points which you have to remember as far as this religious movement of Reformation is concerned. And these 4 steps can be divided on 2 levels, on religious level and on political level. As I told you, this movement actually began in France with Martin Luther, who openly protested against the orthodox rites, rituals, doctrines and practices of the church, of the Catholic Church in his times. So on religious level, this movement started. On political level also, Henry VIII was the king of England in those times. He declared himself as the head of the Church of England. So Henry VIII, the king, also followed the movement of Martin Luther, and he eradicated, in order to eradicate the evils from church and Christianity, he himself acquired the whole power on church, on all the churches which were existing in England in the beginning of the 16th century. Not only this, the king challenged the authority of Pope. Before these times, Pope was considered as the prime important person. He was considered as the most important authority, and people were, supposed to follow him, follow the Pope. But now the picture is changed. Now the people had to follow what the king says, not what the Pope says. So there was a shift of power from religion to politics. Okay, Pope lost his power from Christianity, and the king acquired the same power on Christianity. On religious level, the third important point is the translation of Bible. Till now, the Bible was available only in Latin language. But now, in the beginning of the 16th century, for the first time, the Latin Bible was now translated into English. So a common man started understanding what the original Bible, what original religion of Christianity is. In the medieval period from 12th to 15th, 16th century, people were sometimes misguided by the popes. People were misguided by the authorities of the church. But now people understood the reality. They started following the old scriptures, original Bible, which was only available in Latin language so far. Now it is available in English language, because people did not know Latin language in those times. Only learned people knew that Latin language. And on political level, the fourth point is Queen Elizabeth. Queen Elizabeth came on the throne of England in 1558. She also supported this movement of Reformation. Queen Elizabeth believed in freedom, believed in allowing new thoughts, new religion, and that's why she also went in the line of King Henry VIII, who went in the line of King Martin Luther. So this is how, 1517 Martin Luther, then you remember King Henry VIII, and then you remember Queen Elizabeth. Remember this date, 1558. It is actually the beginning of the period of Elizabethan Age in English literature. And now, people, even the authors of English literature, they were also colored by this movement, because the Pope lost his power on Christianity. The king, along with other social workers, reformed the whole concept of religion, and it was called a new religion which people started following. As a result, the influence of this movement was felt over a wide area in England as well as in other parts of the continent in Europe. And this movement influenced literature too. Now let's start the discussion of how this Reformation influenced English literature. As far as this influence is concerned, you have to remember there are three great important writers of English literature of the 16th and 17th century who were much influenced by this Reformation, and they produced the same kind of religious literature, and they are Edmund Spenser, the poet's poet, John Milton, the only epic poet of English literature, and John Bunyan, a famous prose writer of the 17th century. Let's discuss the contribution of Edmund Spenser and how he was influenced by the movement of Reformation. In most of his works, Edmund Spenser spreads moral messages, religious messages among the readers. And this was the aim of the movement of Reformation. Spenser was much influenced by the movement of Reformation, and that's why Spenser also took literature as a tool to reform the society, to reform the church and Christianity. Milton calls Spenser as a sage. Sage means sadhu, sant, our sage and serious poet. Spenser was indeed a serious poet, a saintly kind of a poet. Spenser wrote his epic poem, The Fairy Queen, which is considered as a serious poem which teaches some moral messages to the society. The first book of The Fairy Queen is a strong defense of the Church of England against the Roman Catholic Orthodox religion. So you can say that the Fairy Queen was the result of the movement of Reformation. Not only this, John Milton also joined this party in the beginning of the 17th century. Just like Edmund Spenser, John Milton also composed most of his literary works under the influence of Renaissance and also Reformation. His poetry gives complete expression to the spiritual enthusiasm of Reformation. So that is the reason why in Milton's poetry you find the element of spirituality. In Milton's poetry you find the element of puritanism. In fact, during the 17th century, that age during which John Milton was living is known as the age of Puritanism. Puritanism means these poets like John Milton and others who were influenced by Reformation, the movement of Reformation, they wanted to purify Christianity under the influence of Renaissance, and that's why John Milton has been considered as an important Puritan poet of his times. His epic poem, Paradise Lost, is a nice example of his influence of Reformation, where he uses art, his own art and learning in the service of religion and moral virtues. As a poet, Milton strongly believed that we must use literature as a tool to reform the society, to reform the religion, and to spread moral virtues among the people. In fact, the theme of this poem, Paradise Lost, epic poem Paradise Lost, is based on the Bible, and it brings moral awareness among the Christians of his times. So this is how Edmund Spenser, who was influenced by Reformation, he wrote religious poetry. John Milton in the beginning of the 17th century again was influenced by the movement of Reformation. He also wrote religious poetry. And the third important writer is John Bunyan. John Bunyan, he was a great prose writer who wrote Pilgrim's Progress. And this book, Pilgrim's Progress, tells us about the journey of a Christian soul, how a Christian soul should live in his life, how he should perform different actions in his life, and how he achieves salvation, moksha, in the paradise. So the whole journey of man has been presented by John Bunyan in a religious manner in his Pilgrim's Progress. This Pilgrim's Progress teaches religious and moral values in very simple language, in simple prose language. It is written with the zeal of Reformation. His Pilgrim's Progress expresses the Puritan ideals which were earlier presented by John Milton and Edmund Spenser before him. This work of art, Pilgrim's Progress, is so popular, friends, in today's times that it has been translated in more than 108 languages. And not only this, you will be surprised to know that Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress has been considered as the another Bible, another second holy book after the Bible by all the Christians around the world, mainly in Europe. And that is the reason why his contribution in the field of religion, his contribution to purify Christianity and Christian people is considered immense by the scholars and critics. So friends, here we come to the end of this discussion. Let me conclude the whole discussion by saying that the movement of Reformation begins in 1517 by Martin Luther, and he protested, he went against the existing church authorities. He wanted to purify, he wanted to reform the Christianity and churches, because there was much corruption, there were so many evils found in Christianity among the Christian people and among the Christian authorities. And Henry the King Henry the VIII also followed King Martin Luther, and then later on Queen Elizabeth also supported this movement, and as a result we have three great writers of English literature during the 16th and 17th century who were much influenced by this movement, and they started writing religious poetry, religious prose writings, which spread the morality, which spread some moral virtues among the people with the aim. This all literatures written by these three poets and writers, was mainly aiming at purifying and reforming the Christian religion. So this is how we come to the end of this discussion. If you really love this video, please share it among your friends and classmates. Thank you very much.